Beef short rib is probably one of the greatest cuts in barbecue. It's absolutely amazing and it's so easy to make. I'm going to show you exactly how in this video. Along with the short ribs, I did pulled pork pit beans, garlic mashed potato, some spring onion on the side and a special sauce. And I'll take you through step by step, show you just how easy it is to create something like this. I'm going to start out at 9 AM with a view to serve food at 6 PM, and I'm going to start preparing the meat. A 1.6 kilogram pork shoulder joint. This one happens to be from Sainsbury's because it was on half price, but any pork shoulder will do. It's a really forgiving cut of meat. You can overcook it and it's not going to cause you too many problems. They usually come with this butcher's string, which is just to hold it all together. I just like to move them out of the way because what I want to do is remove the rind. Because of the temperature we're cooking at, it's not going to crackle up and produce lovely crackling, it's just going to block flavour getting in, so I like to take it off. I want to leave as much of that fat cap on as possible though, so with a really sharp knife and really being careful not to slice your fingers open like I've done in the past, you take off this rind as thin as possible. And it won't be wasted, you can whack it in the air fryer and make yourself some crackling with it later. And this should leave you with a nice fat cap that is going to take on lots of seasoning and just create more bark for you. Then to keep it all held together still, we just take that butcher twine and bring it back over as best as you can, just to vaguely hold the thing in shape. A couple might fall off, it's not really a problem. As long as you've got a couple there, you're fine. Now it's time to add some seasoning. Now this is going to be cooking for ages and it's a big bit of meat, so you can really go heavy with the seasoning. I'm just using my own BBQ Rub here. I made it myself, but you can use just anything. Any store-bought BBQ Rub would be absolutely fine. Or you can just put on, salt, pepper, garlic granules, and maybe some smoked paprika, a little bit of sugar, things like that. Have a play around. You can't go too far wrong with it, you're just adding flavour in. Some people like to use mustard as some sort of binder on this, but honestly I find the meat sticky enough seasoning's going to stick to it. Next we have the star of the show, some 2.2 kilogram beef short ribs from Costco. These come in packs of 2 and I'm cooking 4 ribs in total today. When you're selecting these, you want something with a fairly consistent fat cap and good amount of marbling in the meat. This has got a slightly hard bit of fat on the top which I could trim off, but I'm just going to leave it. These ribs come with a membrane on the bottom. You can pull it off, but honestly it's such a hassle, so I just score it, and once it's cooked you don't even know it was there. For the seasoning on these ribs, I'm just using an equal mix of salt, pepper and garlic granules. You don't need to go any more fancy than that. Some people just use salt and pepper, some people just use salt. Again, it gets a really good coating, it's going to be cooking for a while, and this will just help create a really nice bark. A bit on the bottom, all the sides, and a nice amount on top. These are going to go on the barbecue for about 6 hours, which conveniently is about the same time as the pork will take, and they cook at exactly the same temperature, which is why I love cooking them both together. I set my barbecue up for 120 degrees Celsius and gave them about 4 hours before I even checked on them. Here I'm using my pellet smoker, but honestly any lidded barbecue will do. You could do it on gas barbecue, and if you don't have a barbecue you could just do it in the oven. It's not going to give you that smoky flavour, but the consistency of the meat will be very similar. At this point you just need to keep an eye on the internal temperature of the meat. 95 degrees Celsius is our ultimate goal for both pieces of meat, but when the pork gets to anything above 75 you just want to wrap it in foil to help it get there. I place it in the foil and put the fat cap facing the heat so the fat renders down nicely and we can mix it into the pulled pork at the end. The ribs I leave unwrapped because they're a slightly quicker cook and it gives them a nice bark that my guests really seem to enjoy. With barbecue you're always cooking to temperature, not time, and these ribs reached 95 degrees internal before the pork did, so I'm just going to pull them off and allow them to rest. I'll wrap them up in foil, or a container with the lid would do exactly the same thing. The goal here is to hold the meat at a steady temperature for at least 2 hours to allow it to rest. So I'm going to wrap it up in some towels and put it inside a cool box. If you haven't got a cool box you can just put it in the microwave, obviously don't turn it on, or in the oven because they're both insulated. Once the pork has also reached an internal temperature of 95 degrees Celsius you can pull that off and rest it in exactly the same way. Now it's time to set up the pulled pork pit beans. So I'm starting with some onions, diced and then fried in beef dripping. And once you've got to a nice caramelly colour you can add the baked beans. Here I'm using Aldi baked beans, which is a personal favourite of mine, but other brands are available. We're going to be adding in quite a lot of flavour in here, so the type of beans you use doesn't really matter too much. Give that a nice stir up and then it's time to add some seasoning. So I'm going to add the same barbecue seasoning that I used for the pork, and then some Worcestershire sauce, and that is how you pronounce it. I was born in Worcestershire, I know how to say it. I know for a lot of people pronouncing that correctly is one of the hardest things to do in barbecue. So stir that up, and at this point you'll notice it's getting quite thick, so we just want to add a small cup of water to it so that it doesn't get too stodgy when it's cooking. Set that aside, and once the pork has rested for about an hour, it's ready to pull. So when taking it out, you just want to make sure that you don't lose any of those juices, because this is all just amazing flavour and moisture that's going to go into your pork. The first thing to do with it is to remove the butcher's twine. You don't want to leave any of these in there and have your guests chewing on those in the beans, so make sure that you remove them all. And once they're out the way, it is time to start pulling the pork. Now I'm using some heat-proof gloves here so I can do it with my hands. I find that's the best way because you can really get in there and grind it all down and feel the consistency, make sure that all of that fat is properly mixed in with the rest of the pork. But if you don't have heat-proof gloves, you can do this with a couple of forks or even some of those bear claw things that you see people use. Whatever you need really, just to get it all nice and mixed up, not leaving any massive chunks. It's usually at this point as the chef you get to try a few little tasters. You can tell which ones are the best bits because you're mixing the whole thing, and it's just your right to try them for yourself. If you were just making yourself some pulled pork, that would be it. You've done it. You've made pulled pork. Maybe throw on a bit of barbecue sauce, put it in a bread roll or bap or cob or barm cake, or what do you call rolls where you come from? Let me know in the comments. What we're doing here, however, is mixing it in with our beans to make barbecue pulled pork pit beans. This is a really great way to use up leftover pulled pork. Sometimes if you just leave it on its own in the fridge, it'll dry out a little bit. But by doing this, you're really elevating your beans to be something really special. Once mixed, they want to go back onto the smoker, or again, oven if you don't have a smoker. I've put it on 200 degrees. It'll take about half an hour to get to the right temperature. I've done a separate portion for a vegetarian guest. Obviously, I've not included any of the pulled pork, the beef dripping, or the Worcestershire sauce, because it has fish oil in it. Just giving them both a stir about halfway through cooking to make sure that the heat is distributed evenly, and making sure to use the spoon in the meat one after the vegetarian one, not before. Once it's been fully heated through and taken on some of that smoke, it's time to add the grated cheese. So I'm just starting with some basic grated cheddar, and I'll mix that with some grated mozzarella as well. You can put this back in the smoker to melt the cheese, but to save on some wood pellets, I just shove mine under the grill. Just keep it in there until it's nice and bubbly and golden, and it's ready to serve. Next up, I'm just going to chop up some spring onion. It's really important to have greens, so this is the greens for this meal. I'm just going to prepare them in advance, put them in a little bowl, put them in the fridge, and just serve them when it's ready to eat. One of the keys I find to making a barbecue go smoothly is to prepare as much as possible in advance. Otherwise you just end up running around like a headless chicken. So I've got some halloumi here for our vegetarian guests. I'm just chopping this up in advance. Again, put in a little dish, just put it in the fridge, and just cook it right before serving food. Halloumi you've got to cook straight away, otherwise it goes rubbery. Next, I'm going to make up a super simple special sauce. It tastes absolutely delicious, and it just looks way better than putting a bottle of Heinz on the table. So I've gone about half a cup of mayonnaise, about a third yellow mustard, and about a third salsa. I'm just using a packet from the old El Paso packets that you get and never use. And then I'm using a little bit more Worcestershire sauce. I make this sauce all the time. It goes really well with burgers. It's not a million miles away from sort of your McDonald's special sauce, that kind of thing. Although I did realise that the container I was trying to present it in was nowhere near big enough to mix it in, so I've had to mix it in this massive jug. Added a little bit of salt and then just put it back into the presentation container. That goes in the fridge, and when it comes to serve it, I just put it on the table with a spoon. People help themselves. Next up, we're going to do our super simple garlic mashed potatoes. My top tip here is to get a super sharp peeler. It'll absolutely change your life. Now with all this prep, my hands are getting quite tired, so instead of spending my time chopping up these potatoes, I thought I would just do a click and see if that worked. And it did, saving me loads of time. With that done, they just go on the boil for about 40 minutes, and then I'm adding in my pepper, my salt, and the garlic granules, which is what makes them garlic mashed potatoes, not regular mashed potatoes. A good amount of butter. I don't put anything else in the mash. I don't use milk or cream or anything. I find it makes it too sloppy. I just mash until smooth. Right before serving, I fry up the halloumi, and then it's time to slice the ribs. At this point, they've been resting for about 2 hours, and as you can see, they're literally just falling off the bone. The knife goes through them like butter, and they are just so tender and smell absolutely amazing. This really is one of the most amazing pieces of meat you can cook on a barbecue, and it's just so easy to do. All I do is just slice them in between the ribs and give 1 rib per person. People can either slice them up on their plate, or they can just do what my daughter does, hold them by the bone and eat them like a lollipop. Either way, if you follow these steps and serve these to your guests, I guarantee they'll be very impressed. Something about barbecue food has a way of bringing people together like nothing else. And it is so easy to do. Anyone can do it. I really hope you found this video helpful and you can get out there and share your barbecue food with the people that you love. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.